Now I'd like you to ask yourself and really take a good hard look on your land and see if you have enough browse. You have to have enough browse during the day for whitetails. And there's a lot of different ways to accomplish that, and there's a lot of different types of browse, forms of browse that you can have. Now, it's the opposite of browse is the mature hardwoods, whether it's hardwoods or even mature conifers. You can have 0 to 50 pounds of forage per acre per year in a mature stand of timber. That's a very bad thing because deer feed 5 times in a 24-hour period. They do not have to have lush glamour crops of soybeans and corn or apples every 4 to 5 hours, but they do have to have something. Back in their bedding areas, they have to have browse. It's woody browse, it's roughage. And so it's very important to have that type of quality food for them during the day. They need it, they require it, and if you don't have it, you're probably not going to have deer browsing or bedding on your property. Browse can be just hardwood regeneration. So after a timbering project, they leave, sun can now hit the floor, and there's regeneration. We have areas like this all around me. In this case, in this location, some honeysuckle has popped in. The honeysuckle gets a bad rap because you have Tatarian honeysuckle, you have invasive honeysuckles, and then you have American and beaked honeysuckle that is actually native to a lot of different areas. Honeysuckle can provide great nesting habitat for birds, great cover for small game, and then also during the fall, I've seen whitetails just vacuum in the leaves from honeysuckle. I had one right up on the hill here where I watched 2 opening days ago, and he just kept scooping up those leaves on the ground. It was opening day afternoon. I had my bow. I like hunting with my bow during gun season sometimes. He scooped that up, went over to the neighbors. An hour later, of course, I hear the shot, and certainly it was him. He went over there and ended up dying. But he did feed on that honeysuckle for about a half hour, and that's a consistent pattern you see over and over again. So after your harvest, after your property's been logged, with browse and regeneration and the sun hitting floor, you can often find that you'll go from that 0 to 50 pounds of per acre per year to 1,000 pounds of forage per acre per year. So if you add up the acres of logging on your land, you can increase your food and daytime browse on your land by thousands of pounds for your entire 40 with just completing timber activities. Now, hinge cuts. Hinge cuts are great because the purpose of hinge cuts, if you have the appropriate size timber and type of timber, softwood being largely the type of timber that you want, then you can cut and not only create great side cover at 3 feet tall, that's the height of a deer, deer's eyes, you want it about 3 feet tall. If you're putting it head high and you can just look under, there's no cover. But at the same time, you want that hinge cut to start at your hip to belly high because you want the deer to be able to eat the side browse that takes place off the side of that trunk once it's cut down, once it's hinged and it's still alive. It's producing a lot of side cover. So whether it's timber harvest or hinge cutting, just those forestry practices alone, great way to add forage and browse to your property. And that browse is available all fall, all winter long, just the perfect times to attract deer on your property and build a herd. Now, third step. A lot of parcels I see have big mature timber, and the clients and landowners don't necessarily want to complete a timber harvest at that time, but they want to make a difference. So finding those forked, subordinate, non-timber species, hardwoods that might be mature trees are great to cut out of the woods, reduce your canopy by 20-30%, get sunlight to the forest floor, and you're providing cover by putting that low value trunk and top down on the ground for side cover. Now you might want to remove those trunks for firewood, for woodworking, whatever you want to do, but just looking at a small percentage of your non-timber species trees or non-timber trees, meaning that they're damaged, forked, twisted, subordinate, weak, those are great ones to cut down and get sunlight to the floor. Again, it's all about getting sunlight to the floor and making sure you have that regeneration. Now, another way I see to increase browse on property is I go to a lot of swampy properties, a lot of lowland properties, a lot of properties that have mixed in red osier dogwood, especially in the north. Red osier dogwood is very visible to see, very easy to spot in the woods, and deer love it. On most lands that I go to, if it's available and it's low, meaning that 3 feet high again, they're gonna eat it, and it'll be browsed down to the ground right above snow level. On other properties to go to, or on those same properties, you can have bushes that are as high as this honeysuckle right here, and it's too high for the deer to reach, so obviously they're not going to pull down and eat it. And so you can tell the red osier dogwood that's in reach of deer, it'll be all mowed down, and then those red osier dogwood bushes that are not. A great practice, and you can do this as even a small hunting plot or a harvest plot. I call them browse plots, where you can mow down a patch of red osier dogwood. And I was at a recent client where we're showing that in video, where patch about a 1/4 acre in size, you still leave that edge so it's hidden, but you're mowing that down during the dry period of the summer. And if it's too wet, you can actually mow it down during the winter when there's ice on the ground and everything's frozen. But you're mowing that down to about 1 foot high. You can even fertilize it with broad-based fertilizer, triple 13, triple 19, triple 10, in late, sometime in August, September, and you're just looking for higher volume of growth, more prolific growth. But you're cutting that down, getting in reach of the whitetails, and they will gravitate to those browse plots. Another form of woody browse, and sometimes I think gets too much emphasis placed on it, is either acorns or chestnuts. Those are both roughage, those are both hard to digest, and those are also both perfect, and they perfectly fit in with the browse species of hardwood, regeneration, shrub tips, hinge cutting, side sprouting from hinge cutting, and it's all browse, it's all roughage, it's all low moisture content. And acorns or chestnuts, although they can't be the entire browse package from October to December, they're lacking for the time period that they're going to be available and for the diversity that they actually deliver. But they are a great complement to an already great browse plot program, browse forest regeneration program, and they are a part of a package of browse, and they're just another form of roughage for deer. And that's what places so much value. That's deer will feed twice, number 1 and 2 feedings, meaning morning and afternoon, early afternoon. And then by the time it gets into the 3rd feeding of the day, they're craving that green because they've been eating woody roughage all day, including the chestnuts and acorns. They can't wait to hit that green food source. And then at night, the deer around here head off to the ag land after dark. And so we can effectively hold them with just offering enough browse back in the woods, making sure sunlight gets to the floor, hinge cutting. You might not even have to have much work completed at all by yourself if you have logging done. Aspen regeneration is incredible. Aspen regenerates out of the root system. So you're mowing regeneration down. You can actually harvest for pulp aspen. When it gets to pole timber size, you can mow it down with a forestry mulcher, create browse pockets within. You can stagger those cuttings and openings throughout the woods. But there's a lot of ways to get browse on the ground. Bottom line is, you have to have it for hunting season to hold deer in their bedding hours. You can have great food plots, but if you have hardwoods, mature conifers, the deer are going to cross your land to go over your neighbors, and if there's that big hole of open movement with no cover because there's no sunlight hitting the ground, then they're probably going to stay on your neighbors until dark, move through your open woods, and then hit your food plots, and you really never have that daytime herd that I try to talk about, teach, and deliver strategies for on this YouTube channel. Make sure you have browse in the woods. It's a great time to look without all the leaves on the trees. Really look at what the deer are browsing, try to figure out what it is. And I'm holding this shed and I'm not letting go because this is one of the few sheds that I found on my properties here in southwest Wisconsin for the last 17 years, because we don't have a lot of that late winter cover that those deer are gravitating to. I find a lot of those deer are gravitating to their summer grounds actually in February and March when these antlers are dropping right here. So we're excited to find this one out here today. And we're actually, looking at our browse, looking to see what the deer eat. And we actually need some more browse up here along these deer bedding areas on the inside of this bowl. That'll complement this food source, keep deer here, and it actually starts to form a overall strategic use of stand locations where we can have an assemblage of stands to create morning stand locations up there, evening stand locations down here. And the browse is a major point of that and a major strategy of your land, because if you don't have browse, you're not going to have daytime whitetails on your land, bedding on your land. So it's a great time to check it out right now so you make sure that you have enough for this hunting season.